My wife's father, the CEO, handed me my job while I was negotiating a $12 million contract in Europe, and his 17-year-old son. He will be the next O. He grinned. My wife informed me that he needed it when I got back. More. I uttered 6 words. Their expression dropped. You are familiar with the sensation of sitting in first class and gazing down at the clouds as though they were yours? Yes, I was sailing at 38,000 feet above the $12 million contract that Atlantic has inked is burning a hole in my laptop bag. 6 days. 3 all-nighters in Europe that would have killed a lesser man, and a final negotiation that was as savage as it had to include a parental warning. I was Rowan Pierce, however, the man who had just done what my father-in-law for almost 2 years, Reginald, had been saying that it was impossible in this climate. The distribution agreement in Europe was no ordinary deal. It was the agreement. Crane Meridian Group's ultimate goal that would secure we had been pursuing a continental presence ever since Obama took office. As other American businesses were receiving their Brexit red tape and post-pandemic supply chain woes had handed them their asses. But I'd somehow managed we successfully negotiated agreements with wholesalers ranging from Milan to Zurich. Furthermore, I must say that those Swiss sweet discourse is difficult for bastards. When my phone rang against my thigh, I snapped out of my reverie about my victory lap. The display filled with congrats, making my chest feel as though I had just won the Super Bowl. Our CFO, Priya Kapoor, and the sole employee capable of making spreadsheets appear attractive, had delivered a message that was essentially the business version of a standing ovation. Rowan, holy. 2. In a nice way, the board is going crazy. Arriving, this was essentially a marriage from Priya, who typically spoke in terms of a calculator, suggestion. The communication from Irene Shaw, however, was the real deal. Irene was now chair of the board and as cozy as a tax audit. This woman had been in charge of businesses since I'm learning how to tie my own shoes. Additionally, she was known for gathering CEO heads like a serial killer in the corporate world. Murderer. Typically, she used just the right amount of words in her statements, and not one more syllable. Proud of you, Rowan, was what I saw when I opened her text. I almost spilled my $20 worth of airline whiskey on my Italian leather shoes. Triumphantly riding this wave I decided that because she had been putting up with my stress eating, it was time to tell her the good news. And 3 in the morning. Calls for the previous month's conferences. Clara, my lovely, intelligent, and sometimes irate, you deserve to hear directly from the horse about this triumph, wife. I wrote a message that was most likely embarrassingly eager, completed it. 12 million were sealed and signed. Your spouse simply turned into a legend. When I return, I'll have dinner somewhere nice. She responded more quickly than I anticipated, but not quite in the tone I wanted to achieve. Let's face it. A single confetti emoji felt about as excited. As a golf clap, then dinner at my folks' house. 7:00 p.m., no congrats. No, you fantastic bastard. No, I'm very excited to join you in celebrating. Only a call to the Crane family acted as though I were being summoned for a performance evaluation. Don't misunderstand me. I adore my in-laws. The word love may be strong. I put up with them with the poise that comes from having 5 years of marriage to their daughter. However, something about being ordered to show up at the Crane estate usually gives me the impression that I'm going to get measured for a suit that I didn't request. It's more than just a house. It's a homage to outdated finances and resentments. Every piece of steel, glass, and architecture, intimidation intended to remind you of your particular position within the family. The Crane compound, due to situated on almost 10 acres of prime Lagos real estate, calling it a house would be equivalent to calling the Pentagon an office building, a state that most likely exceeds the lifetime expenses of the majority of people. It's among those locations where achievement gets evaluated by whose last name you're lugging about, not by what you've accomplished. Additionally, since mine Considering that it's Pierce rather than Crane, let's just say that I've never felt quite at home in those marble corridors. I attempted to ignore the strange sensation as the aircraft started to descend near Maritala Mohammed Airport. That felt like a chilly draft creeping up my spine. My career should have been at its peak on this day. I simply completed a transaction that would likely be reported in trade publications and possibly get me a corner office with not the glorified broom closet I'd been working out of, but a genuine view. What made Clara's message seem less clear, more akin to a summons to court than an invitation to celebrate? Perhaps I was exaggerating the situation. Perhaps she was just thrilled and eager to tell her family the wonderful news as soon as possible. Perhaps her parents had previously unlocked they were anticipating a toast to their son-in-law's most recent victory while sipping fine champagne. Perhaps Reginald would give me a glance at last, with something like deference rather than the nebulous disillusionment he typically saved for quarterly profits. Reports as well as his golf swing. Or perhaps, and when Legos spread out, this was the idea that was really beginning to get to me, out under the wing of the aircraft. There was another thing happening. There was something that needed me at 7 p.m. sharp, adequately attired for the type of family theater that would be taking place in that glass palace where everything appeared flawless, but nothing ever was. I knew I was home when the wheels landed with that gratifying thump, back in the familiar weight of Nigerian humidity and the controlled chaos of Lagos traffic. While I awaited I went through my phone again, glancing at those congrats texts, like plane to taxi to the gate. They served as a talisman of sorts, protecting me from whatever was waiting for me at the Crane House. $12 million expansion in Europe, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for some reason, I was beginning to feel less like I was on top of the world and more like I was entering a situation that was entirely related to the type of family and had nothing to do with celebration, pricey wine, and commerce that takes place behind closed doors. However, I picked up my carry-on and got ready to return to the lovely chaos that was my life. I reminded myself that at least I'd merited my place at the table they were arranging. That was demonstrated by the contract in my laptop bag. Whatever. It was I would handle it like the guy who just accomplished the impossible if they were waiting for me at 7:00 p.m. How horrible could it be, after all? At 7 p.m., entering the Crane family dining room. It was like entering a museum exhibit with the title, How the Wealthy Consume Their Young. The entire location is rife with threats and money. That specific mix of imported truffles and barely disguised animosity that only comes with money passed down through generations and severe disruption in the family. It's likely that the crystal chandelier above the mahogany table cost more than most people's homes, illuminating place settings with prismatic light that appeared to have been arranged by someone possessing a doctorate in passive aggression. Sitting at the head of the table, Reginald Crane appeared to be overseeing their last dinner. Had Jesus been sporting a $5,000 suit and harbored significant feelings for his father problems, the 62-year-old man still exuded the same demeanor as the college quarterback he had been 40 years prior. Every square jaw, silver hair that, despite the humidity of Legos, never seemed to move. Crane Meridian Group was founded by him using his father's little construction company into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and he would never allow anyone to forget it. More than 5 minutes in a row, Reginald's golden boy, Theo, was seated on his right, and a living example of all the worst aspects of nepotism, 17 years old, and already acting as like he controlled the world, which, let's face it, he very likely would eventually, regardless of whether they deserved it or not. Until the child's biggest accomplishment had been crashing the family McLaren into a hedge, while attempting to win over a lady from his foreign school. At least he had done it stylishly, though. In this household, that appeared to matter a lot. Beside her younger brother, Clara seemed to be illuminated from the inside out, unadulterated pride in the family. She was dressed in the same cold perfection that she had inherited from her trust fund. This was what my wife had, skill for seeming. Stunningly beautiful, and making you feel as though you let her down simply by being there. She had chosen to wear the traditional little black dress tonight, along with a smile that could shatter glass. Sharp, lovely, and totally unreadable. The small conversation about affluent subjects flowed like pricey wine. People seemed to find it fascinating. The sad deterioration of competent service at charity galas, yacht club politics, and their preferred hotels in Europe. I did my part, mentally calculating and nodding and laughing when appropriate. Given what this family most likely spent on floral arrangements, how many individuals in Lagos could live comfortably on that amount? Normal week. Once we had consumed enough champagne to keep a tiny boat afloat, Reginald got up with the sort of dramatic flourish that gave the impression that he had spent the entire evening preparing for this moment. Maybe all week, in fact. The man did enjoy making large gestures, particularly when there was a crowd around and they could hear. He speaks to new generations. He started to lift his crystal flute as if he were preparing to knight someone to see. Crane Meridian Group's future and the legacy we're creating for future generations. His voice exuded the unique combination of confidence and authority that comes with never having been told no by those who were important. The knife was subsequently provided along with all the surgical accuracy of a man who had spent decades grinning while slicing people down to size. With immediate effect, Theo Scholl assumed the position of Chief Executive Officer. As part of his transition, he will spend the next year shadowing me into the role of leader. Like a grenade in a flower shop, the words exploded into the dining room. There was a brief period of shock, quiet, then the kind of courteous muttering that wealthy people make while they're seeing a public execution, yet don't want to come across as overly excited about it. There was a sneer on Theo's face that made you want to check your wallet. Additionally, you may be returning